for nothing and everything. And does one just, until the drop, which I can't have any say in or any control over, does one just do what happens?
Yeah, there's no prescription to this because this already is. I mean, even the idea of it dropping is still a false notion, because everything is intrinsically free always. So right now it might feel like you're stopping at the body and that you're inside the body, but actually there is total boundlessness. And this speaking isn't happening to anyone. I'm not speaking to you in time. You in time is peering in this. Actually, the experiencer is not a thing and not moving, yet moving at the same time. So it's kind of a massive contradiction, because in one way, in order to talk about this, I have to talk about some form of change. But the change idea really is a hindrance, because really there's always total freedom. And even though Bradley might be having feeling like he's trapped inside there, or that he's experiencing it, it's always total freedom. This is always boundlessness or nothingness expressing itself. Even if it feels like it's expressing itself to you, Bradley, that's still nobody and nothing. That's still total silence appearing as sound.
So the continuing to listen, the continuing to tune in is just happening.
Yeah, that's just happening. And why not? If that's going to carry on, as long as there's a resonance with this message. I used to, when I was younger, I used to hear non-duality, and I used to think I had to stop it in some way. It was like, oh, I've got to give up seeking. But I'm not saying that you've got to do anything. The way that the body's programmed, the way that it should move, is it should move towards that which is pleasurable. And that's a really natural thing, and humans think that's a negative thing. So if it's resonating with this, there should be a form of pleasure watching it. It should be a joy. Not always, like when the person's in a bad mood, but if this is a painful thing, then it would be bizarre if somebody was listening to it and it was really awful every time they listened to it. It's like if it resonates, then there will be a listening to it. Just like if you like eating certain foods, then there'll be a tendency to go towards those foods. But the human lives in this bizarre world of always denying itself of pleasure. It always thinks, oh no, I should be this, or I shouldn't be that, or I should do this or shouldn't do that, or it wants to cover up that it's moving towards pleasure. It thinks that it should be showing to the world that it's acting out of compassion, or it's acting out of niceness for others, or something like that. So it kind of puts all these layers on to try and pretend to others that it's something which it isn't. And the natural movement of the body should always be towards pleasure, just like the animals. The animals won't sit out in the freezing cold if there's the possibility for warmth. The animals will go towards food, they'll go towards the sunlight. They'll go towards the nicest food if there's the choice as well, or the food that's most pleasurable. So if this resonates, then I presume there'll be a side effect in the body. Side effect as in like the body will experience pleasure, so there'll be wanting to listen to it. You can see me as well, Bradley?
Yeah.
You just revealed yourself. It's like the little thing of Skype goes boop.
Right.
And that's the only reason, really. There is no reason, like everything's just happening, but in the human apparent story, the reason, if there is any, the person to live for is because there's a love of this subject. Like there's some form of love of that. Like it's a really beautiful subject, and when it begins to be heard, it's also frustrating. It's insanely frustrating at points because the person's wanting to seek, but overall it loves this subject. There's a love for this in the apparent person world. Ultimately it's all just happening, and there's not really any reason or momentum. But yeah, the subject also can sometimes make you want to headbutt your computer. Because there's that momentum to seek, and then it doesn't know where to go. and what to do. And it's momentum of the human is to follow. Most humans aren't leaders, most humans are followers. And so they often confuse that with non-duality and look to non-duality for something to follow, and it hasn't got anything to follow. It's not a religion. So it's not something that you can base your life around or join in some sort of way, like a Christian group or something, or an ashram. They do have that in some places. Because that's the natural tendency, again, of the human to follow. And that's not a bad thing, again, that's the way the human is programmed to be a follower. We would all be at war if there weren't many followers.
What was the last thing you said?
We'd all be at war if there weren't many followers. Like, because we live in groups, we have to follow. We have to do as we're told. That's why you often find non-duality, which does give something to follow, is more successful because that's more relaxing for the person, because that's what it's used to. The natural tendency of the human is to follow, and then it has something which it can follow, and it thinks, okay, in day 3 I'll get this, in 2 months I'll get that, in 2 years I'll get this. But really, non-duality is about the celebration of this, and it's got nothing to do with time. It's the celebration of what's happening. It's the remembering of the freedom that's always here and not bound on time, and not bound on something.
And how do you mean celebration only is just isness, right?
Yeah.
Kind of, it's not like a...
You celebrating, although the human might want to celebrate, like the side effect might be celebrate good times, but the very appearance of it is a celebration in all its colours, all of it. It's only the human that likes and doesn't like it and finds it disgusting and cruel and beautiful.